Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert, which is Interact QuickBooks daily series running from 8:30 in the morning to 9 o'clock in the morning, all designed to help small businesses. And we're here essentially to answer questions. So you can ask any questions in the comments, or you can use the hashtag QBATE on Twitter. So let me introduce myself first of all. I'm Merlie Calvert, and I'm the founder and CEO of a UK startup called Farillio. We are an online platform for business solutions specifically designed for small businesses. And our mission, which in times of COVID-19 has kind of never felt more relevant or needed, is to ensure that no small business struggles or fails because they can't get access to the critical information and core materials that they need to grow, to fix problems, and to thrive. And we've been around for 3 years. Farillio is my third startup, but my first one that's fully independently owned, so I am entirely to blame for this one. But it really was born out of massive passion for small business. I have terrific admiration for anyone who has the guts to take this on, because I think guts is a word that really sums up the small business community so effectively. It takes serious guts to get started and a heck of a lot more courage to keep going. And I think in times like this, it really is the courage and resilience of our community that is being massively put to the test. So what we do on Farillio is we provide you with what I like to call a sort of digital recipe book. So a bit like you wake up in the morning and you think, you know what, I want to have curry for tea. We as small business owners and managers wake up in the morning and we think, I need to hire someone because I need more help. I kind of think I probably should be more tax efficient, but I've got no idea how to go about that. I know that health and safety might impact my workshop or my business, but it sounds a wee bit overwhelming. I'm not an expert in those things. How do I fix this stuff? So from anything to managing staff to working out whether your marketing campaigns are data protection or compliant, whatever it is, we wake up and we have an outcome, a bit like that curry, in mind. And we just want a recipe to follow. So we want to know what those ingredients are. We want them all joined up, not just fragments of the solution. We want the bits of law, the bits of tax, the bits of sales and marketing, the bits of just practical know-how that may come from our own peer group. And then we want a trusted methodology so that actually we can just follow, knowing that it's good stuff, knowing that it's good advice, knowing that the solutions that are recommended are workable and have been well tested. And then we can get the outcome that we want. And I think that's critically important for us. I mean, there was a wonderful survey with not so wonderful results last year by small business, which estimated that as a community, we're spending 570 million hours, 570 million hours trying to find answers, trying to fix problems. And that equates, they estimated, to about 3 working weeks of time lost per business trying to figure stuff out for ourselves when we're not the experts, and we're not doing the stuff that we're really good at and getting the sales coming in because we've been pulled away from our businesses to do this. And it also equates to an estimated £60 billion of spend. So that's a heck of a lot of time, a heck of a lot of money without really finding the solutions that we want. And the sort of treble whammy at the end of all of that was that a lot of people who took part in that survey really weren't that happy with the outcome that they got. So it is a really big problem that I think as a community we face. It's one of the reasons why we set Farillio up 3 years ago to serve this problem. And I think for me, what's been so interesting, I've been a lawyer for many, many years, over 2 decades worth of law. I've been in commercial director and founder roles in other businesses too, so at C-suite level, is that there is a big gap to get us the answers that we want. So I'm going to do my bit now, not as the founder of a business, but for the Ask the Expert series this morning, and I'm going to start taking some questions too. And I really hope I can get you the answers that you're looking for. So my first question is from Suze from Twitter DM, and she is asking, I was offered a buyout of my business by a chain before COVID-19, but they've gone quiet since. Is there anything like a verbal agreement that has to be taken as legal? Oh, Suze, this is such a good question. I think even in normal times, the negotiations that take place when you're buying and selling businesses really need to be recorded in something like writing, just so that everybody has clarity and you've got something that can anchor that discussion in place. COVID-19 has just turned the world inside out, and I think a lot of people who have or had really good intentions to grow their businesses, to buy other businesses, and to spend money, that's all just fallen away a little bit. So I don't obviously know the personal circumstances of your deal, but it might be that the silence is simply because they've had to postpone buying decisions. We know lots of businesses who have got money or had money have had to divert those precious resources somewhere else, hopefully temporarily. Verbal agreements, they're really easy to wiggle out of. So I think the best advice I could give you right now is to try and keep in touch with them. Take their silence not necessarily as an indication that the deal is off, but they may need a bit of extra time to sort of take stock and get back to normal before they can be in a position to buy. But communication is the most important thing right now. I know that's not a really helpful answer because you've got nothing to pin it on. But ultimately, even if you wanted to start taking slightly more firm action against them, the likelihood is it would be quite difficult and possibly quite costly to do. So I'd preserve the relationship if you can. If they were interested beforehand, the chances are they'll be interested again when we all come through COVID-19. And let's hope that that doesn't take too long. I'm going to move on and look at a question from Fern, also on Twitter DM. And Fern says, I own a gym, but my landlord is asking for rent still. Is there a way to ease off the pressure without having to take out a loan? This is a really good question. So one of the things that the government introduced was a mandate to landlords that no business can be evicted during this period, and you can and should be talking to them about some kind of payment compromise plan. They are entitled to ask for their rent, and you still have a legal obligation to pay it, and you've probably got legal documentation that says that. But no landlord in their right mind wants to lose a good tenant, and you clearly don't want to be ousted out of your premises at the end of this period. So I think the best thing to do is to be proactive, be on the front foot, talk to them about the difficulties you're having. It won't come as any surprise to them. And there's certainly no blame in this, and you don't need to feel apologetic about having this discussion. This isn't a debt that's been caused by you being a bad tenant, but do have that conversation and see if you can reach some form of payment compromise. I know a lot of landlords are agreeing that they'll give people a payment holiday, so you still have to pay the rent, but they're adding 3 months, for example, onto the end of lease agreement. So they've got a bit more certainty at the end of the agreement. The money still has to be paid, but they're eking out, say, 3 months of payment holiday to address that. Just get it recorded in writing. There's lots of advice on this on Farillio's website as well. So if you go to www.Farrill, which is FARILL.io, then you can find in the blog section a number of rapid fire videos and some advice on this very topic. It's not an easy one, but the very best advice I could give to any commercial tenant right now is to talk to your landlord. It's in everybody's interest to preserve that relationship. I really hope it works for you. One of the other things that we've got going at Farillio right now, and it's a community-wide campaign. We have experts across our ecosystem who work with us on our platform content, is a campaign that anyone can join. If you look for the hashtag 3HR Pledge, the 3 Hour Pledge, on Twitter. If you go to Farillio's feed, you'll find it there, pinned in a tweet at the top. We have experts across the UK who are pledging 3 free hours of advice on topics across the board. So landlord and tenant is one of those. I'm sure you'll find it there. If you have a need for advice and you're really stuck, tweet at Farillio or DM Farillio. Let us know what it is. Use the hashtag 3HR pledge, 3-hour pledge, and we'll matchmake you with somebody who can help your solutions too. That's a massive campaign that we're very proud of as a Farillio community-wide organisation. Tom from Twitter, I'm going to look at your question now. What have you done for your own business during COVID-19? That's not a fair question. I think, like every business, this took us completely by surprise. None of us anticipated it. We have done a huge amount of contingency planning. We're obviously a tech business, so we can to a degree work remotely, but I think the human cost of all of this is quite difficult. So keeping teams motivated, on track, reassured, particularly when businesses all around us are furloughing employees. We've looked at that ourselves, as you would expect us to, is hard. I think we've tried to be very pragmatic, to take good advice from good experts, and to really make sure that at the end of the day we can continue to survive. So cutting everything back, we're fairly lean anyway, but cutting back any unnecessary spend, protecting our people, agreeing terms with our landlord to try and get rent breaks, deferring VAT. We are also considering the time to pay initiative by HMRC that enables you to agree a sort of a deferred or compromise payment arrangement with HMRC for PAYE and national insurance contributions payments too. So there's an ability to eke those out. Like many businesses that has employees, the payroll tax and NIC is a pretty significant chunk of what we spend on. So being able to defer that is really important. We've applied for business rates relief. So we've literally gone down the list of everything, looked at what's relevant to us, had a discussion about the impact that it makes to our cash flow, and then made decisions as fast and as sensibly as we can on that. I don't think it's easy for any business. At the same time, we've gone into overdrive. I mean, we are in the very fortunate position to have access to an enormous community of experts who have lots and lots of answers. So we're producing content, Hell for Leather, we're doing lots of video work. You can find it across the blog site as well as the main Farillio site. And we've also turned our site free to anyone who gets involved in the 3-hour pledge campaign, whether you're pledging support. There's always room for more people who've got great expertise to help their fellow businesses. We're a massive believer that we all help each other, and few of us will struggle and fail. But if you're pledging the support, if you're claiming a pledge because you want that support, then you can also have access to everything that our platform has to offer for 3 months for 3. So we're kind of in overdrive, creating content, speaking to experts, doing videos, answering questions, at the same time as making sure that we can still keep the wheels on our own cart. So what is the next question? Yen from Twitter. I've transformed my high street restaurant to be delivery only. Are there any legal issues I need to think of, especially when we go back to normal? I think that's a really good question. Now, I'm not an expert in food businesses myself. One thing I do know is that in normal times you would need planning permission or permission from your local authority to change from a normal food business to being a takeaway business. I think you still need to notify your local authority that that's what you're doing, but they're being incredibly lenient about this and in fact encouraging businesses to keep going and to do that. So if you've already spoken to your local authority just to let them know you're doing that, then you're probably on the right tracks, and I suspect they'll have more guidance for you if there's anything else that you need to do on that too. You might want to look at your insurance cover. You might also want to look at just the terms that your staff are working under to make sure that if they're suddenly out on bikes or in delivery vehicles, that that's covered in your contract too, and that you've got any policies in place regarding how they're treating vehicles, etc. So a little bit of a take stock on your documentation would be wise, but in the main, I think do what you need to do to keep your business going, and get a bit of advice if you're not quite sure, and you should be on the right tracks. But I think it's a really sensible move, yeah, and super sensible. Right, let me have a look at my next question. Aaron from Facebook. Hi, Merlie. My clients are unfortunately having to furlough staff. I'm really sorry to hear that. Do you have any advice on what documentation to have in place to stay compliant? Or maybe a resource or platform that we can push our clients to? Well, I would say Farillio because I'm biased, but we do have huge amounts of guidance on furloughing, what it means, what the alternatives are, and also a furlough letter agreement that you can give to your staff. Furloughing is a big area. It's obviously a lifesaver scheme that the government has introduced to prevent small businesses from having to put staff on the other two main options that they would typically have. One is to lay them off on an unpaid basis, usually, assuming they have the right to do that in the employment contract. You can't do it unless your contract says as an employer you have the right to do that. The other alternative typically is to reduce their hours, and obviously reduce salary, or to make them redundant. None of them particularly great outcomes for employees, and particularly for businesses who really don't want to feel like they're penalising much valued staff for a situation that really isn't anyone's fault. So if you do have provisions in the employment contract that say you can lay off staff, that might be something that you want to look at. I wouldn't necessarily rule out layoffs right now because you need to do the maths. It's where having a good accountant on your side really helps. The furlough agreement essentially, or the furlough scheme essentially, enables you to take staff who you don't have work for right now, but who you hope to have work for in a few months' time when everything gets back to normal, and to essentially pay them 80% of their salary, up to a maximum cap of £2,500 before tax. And the government will essentially cover that 80% of salary. It does mean the employee doesn't get 20% of their normal salary, or if they're paid above that level, they won't get their normal salary at 80%, but it does mean they're getting something so that people can still pay rent, they can still keep going. They aren't allowed to work the business during that time. It is seen as an alternative to redundancy, so they are effectively not allowed to do any work for your business, although they can do some training as long as it's not generating revenue for the business. The reason I say do the maths and speak to an accountant if you can, is because sometimes for some employees it may work out cheaper to actually lay them off on a rolling basis. So you might want to say to your staff, do 1 week paid, 1 week off, 1 week paid, 1 week off. 50% of their normal salary might work out as better for them than the furlough scheme. It might also work out as something that you figure you can afford. So do look at all the options. As I say, Farillio's got lots of guidance, not quite so whistle-stop explained as I've done here, but you can work your way through it and consider what the best solution is for you. These are horrible times. Nobody wants to be laying off staff. We all had expectations when we came into January 2020 with a very different landscape. But if you need that guidance, do go and take a look at it. And that letter, as I say, if you need to put your staff on furlough, is there also. Just remember to get your employees to sign it because it is a change to their normal employee contract terms. So they will need to sign it to indicate that they consent to that temporary change. Lorna from Facebook Messenger has a question for me. Lorna says, I own a pharmacy and I have a cash flow issue at the moment as drugs are more expensive to buy. Is there anything I can do to try and get payment quicker by the NHS? Oh gosh, Lorna. First of all, thank you so much for everything that you are doing and how brave you and your staff are being for continuing to be open and to look after us all. It's unforgivable that you guys have cash flow issues. I don't know, I'll be honest, what the position is in relation to pharmacies. I think it's awful that drugs are becoming more expensive. We've seen this even in our local pharmacy down the road. If I find an answer, if I can think of anything that might help you, Lorna, then I will post it on our own Twitter feed. But I think the very best thing you can do is to go through the channels that you've got. You are much more direct to the people that are making the decisions than we are, sadly. Kim from Facebook Messenger. I'm looking at partnering with another business and together changing our approach during this crisis. Awesome. Our finances are stretched and we want to write our contract ourselves. Do you see any risk in this? No one of us has done it ourselves, but we're doing our best to keep costs down. First of all, I think collaboration is an awesome approach right now. We're seeing a lot of our customers come together, even some of them with rivals, to join up and join forces, whether you do it temporarily or, as I suspect may happen, relationships last longer term. I think this is a really sensible play in these times. Don't worry about creating your own contract. Go straight to Farillio. We can look after that for you, so you can do it yourself. There's also a pay-as-you-go solution if you do get a bit stuck and you want to ask an expert, but you'll find plenty of guidance there. It will also help you choose the right contract that you want. So you may want to look at the collaboration agreement, Kim, which is probably the best solution, I would say, rather than terms and conditions. But I would use that as your starting point. It's open, it's free to anybody, whether you use the 3-hour pledge or not, for a 1-week trial. So I would say go there, take a look at the collaboration agreement, and work your way through it. Ultimately, any contract just has to record what you agree, and it needs to be thorough, and it needs to think about the main things that sometimes when we're having these negotiations don't occur to us, but may well come back to bite us if we haven't covered them off and we haven't got them in writing later. So be guided by that agreement. You can collaborate together on it. You can share the agreement between you until you're happy with the terms. And as I say, if you get stuck, there is a pay-as-you-go solution which can help you to and get you in touch with a real expert if you need it. Opo, I hope I said that right. Opo from Twitter. Do you think now is a silly time to try and start a business? I got made redundant just before COVID-19 and can't get a job. Can I still get funding right now, or is that a silly idea? It's not a silly idea, and it's not a silly question at all. I think lots of people are going to be in a similar position. I think what I would say is funding is available, and there are grants available. The first thing I would highly recommend is you sit down and you look at the plan and pinning together a really good plan so that you can be absolutely sure and confident that you've got an idea that people are going to really like and be prepared to pay for. And the key is really getting people to pay for what your idea is. There's a fantastic business planning 101 guide on Farillio. I definitely suggest you use that as a starting point. It will walk you through the sorts of questions that you should be asking yourself and a way to map it all out on one piece of paper that will hopefully give you the confidence that this is a goer. You're going to need that if you're going to ask for funding. There's also lots of advice on funding on Farillio too, but start with the Business Planning 101 guide. The questions that it will guide you through answering are questions that you should know already. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need any expertise whatsoever to go through that process. Try those techniques first. They were developed with Birkbeck University and their business students, many of whom are running businesses themselves or starting them. And it's not a silly time at all. I think if you've got a great idea, right now is a really good time to go and test it. If you can make it work in these times, you can make it work in normal times. Right, I think I have time for one more question. Let me have a look quickly. Freddie from Twitter. Do you think the government will extend the furlough period? All my staff are on 0 hours, but I'm worried about the reputation if I whip them all down to 0. Oh, Freddie, yes, I think is the answer to that question. I think there's an expectation that, certainly from the experts that we're talking to, and we have plenty in Farillio's ecosystem, the expectation is that it will be extended. How long for, I don't know. Please don't worry about reputation right now, Freddie. Every single employee knows why employers are having to do this. Um, we're all in this boat not because we're bad businesses. You were a good business before. It's awful to have to furlough any member of staff, but you're doing it for all the right reasons. I mean, the important thing, and your staff will understand this, particularly if you're talking to them and being open and honest with them. The important thing is to keep your business going, so that there is a job for them to come back to, so that there is some kind of employment that can continue after that. Nobody should be worried about reputation right now. I think if you're dealing with your employees honorably and you're talking to them openly and honestly about the situation, everyone understands. It's not something that any of us feels comfortable with, but keep your business going first and foremost, so you've got something for them to come back to. I've got one more question, apparently. Turn from Twitter. What kind of insurance and business do I need to become a delivery driver? I'm starting to offer my services to some local businesses who are offering decent rates. They said I need to be a limited company, though. That's really interesting. There are plenty of business models besides a limited company. Limited company gives you individually a lot of protection. It is more admin, but what it essentially does is divorce your personal assets, anything that you may own yourself, from the assets of the business. So if something goes wrong in the business and you run it really well, and the business goes down, then there's a sort of fire break between the business and you. So any debts of the business, anything that the business fails to be able to pay itself if it goes under, stops at that firewall. You don't then risk anything that you own having to be sold essentially to service the debts of the business. So the limited company model is a great model for individuals. I'm not quite sure why they would be asking you to be a limited company. You can still get insurance as a sole trader, which is the other common model, particularly if you are just starting out and you're just becoming a delivery driver. So I would ask them for some clarification about why they feel you need to be a limited company, just so that you understand what's required. The kind of insurance you'll need, there are several forms of insurance. There's a really good guide on Farillio that will talk you through the types of insurance that your type of business might need, and you can reach out to us as well if you have questions, and we'll help you work that through. But I would say, first and foremost, if you are delivering, then you're going to need vehicle insurance. You may need some kind of liability insurance too. Right, I think I am out of time, folks, today. I would love to have asked or answered more questions. I hope today's session was helpful. I am delighted to say that following on from me at the same time and in his own place tomorrow, 8:30 tomorrow morning, is Luke Barth, who is the next expert for you to ask questions to. Luke is a partner at Elliott's, and he is a high growth accounting specialist. Sounds like somebody we might all need going forward. So once again, thanks very much, folks, for listening to me. As I say, if you are stuck, if you need help, if money, as it is for many of us, and believe me, I know this, if money is tight, do reach out, do check out the hashtag 3HR Pledge, the 3-hour pledge. On Twitter, lots of experts there offering free expertise for up to 3 hours of their time. And a lot of the materials that I've mentioned today, or a lot of the guidance, you can find on Farillio too. So do check out the website, www.farillio.io. And meanwhile, I just want to wish everyone here all the very best. COVID-19 is a rotten situation, but if we stick together, if we keep sharing information, if we keep asking questions and getting answers, then hopefully fewer of us will struggle and fail in the future. So thank you very much once again for listening.